Dear viewers, in the second part of our discussion on general principles and clinical use of antimicrobial drugs, let me start with what is antimicrobial resistance. Antimicrobial resistance is resistance to the different antimicrobial agents developed by the bugs. The bugs are much cleverer than us. They mutate very rapidly and adapt to the environment very rapidly. That antimicrobial resistance will be a problem was first forecast by the scientist who discovered the first antibiotic, that is penicillin. It was forecast by Sir Alexander Fleming long time back in 1945. And now the antibiotic resistance is a major problem in most of the institutions, in the hospitals, in the healthcare setting, even in the community. We are getting patients every day suffering from bacteria which are resistant to multiple antibiotics. So, bacterial antimicrobial resistance may be an intrinsic or inherent property of the bacteria. For example, gram-negative bacilli are always resistant to glycopeptides. Gram-positive cocci are always resistant to monobactams. Protease group of organisms, they are resistant to tetracyclines, polymyxins, nitrofurantoin. Salmonella, which causes typhoid fever, and Shigella, which causes bacillary dysentery, they are always resistant to first and second generation cephalosporins and aminoglycosides. Non-fermenting organisms like Pseudomonas and Acinetobacter are always resistant to ertapenem. Then anaerobes are resistant to aminoglycosides. Enterococcus group of organisms, they are resistant to cephalosporins, low levels of aminoglycosides, cotrimoxazole and clindamycin. And Candida krusei and Candida inconspicua are resistant to fluconazole. So this is intrinsic resistance. But bacteria, other than intrinsic resistance, they can also acquire resistance. So acquired resistance may be due to mutation in an existing DNA inside the bacteria or due to acquisition of new DNA. Bacterial DNA generally exists in three forms. One is the chromosomal DNA and extrachromosomal DNA, either as plasmids or episomes or as transposons. So resistance can develop, resistant genes can develop anywhere. In the chromosomal, in mutations may occur, plasmid mutations may occur, transposons also mutation may occur, or mutation may occur in the regulatory genes which just regulate these genes responsible for antimicrobial resistance or antimicrobial sensitivity. So spread of antimicrobial resistance from one bacterium to another occurs by three common mechanisms: conjugation, transduction and transformation, of which conjugation is the most important and the commonest mechanism seen for transfer of antimicrobial resistance from one bacterium to another in the environment. So how this happens? The conjugation process, a bacterium which possesses the antimicrobial resistant gene inside it will always form a copy of that. So it is always in duplicate. All the genes are in duplicate. So it has a copy which it can spare. So what it does, it forms a special type of fimbrium known as a sex pilus, which goes and attaches to another bacterium in the environment which does not have that gene. So one copy of the gene from this bacteria which has it will go to the other bacteria which doesn't have it. So the next bacteria will acquire that gene and itself becomes antibiotic resistant. And it will again do the same thing to the other bacteria in the environment. So bacteria here, they have a lot of fellow filling. So they are whatever they have acquired, they are transmitting it to their brethren. So there is one factor known as resistant transfer factor, which is very important. It is a plasmid of great medical significance. So this resistant factor is important. It acts as a carrier or a vehicle for transmission of these small r factors, that is the resistant determinant genes. So resistant determinant genes, one or more than one gene, they are attached to this plasmid, that is resistant transfer factor, and this resistant transfer factor carries these genes from one bacteria to another. An R factor may have several smaller determinants. Resistance to more than or 8 drugs may be transferred simultaneously from one bacterium to another. But if the resistance transfer factor dissociates from the smaller determinants and the two exist at two separate plasmids or two separate genes, the host cell remains drug resistant, but resistance cannot be transferred to other bacteria in the environment. So the genetic mechanisms of drug resistance in bacteria may be due to mutation, that is mutational drug resistance, or one of the methods of genetic transfer which is known as transferable drug resistance. So mutational drug resistance is again of two types. One is stepwise mutation, for example, penicillin resistance. High levels of resistance is achieved only by series of small step mutations. And one step mutation, that is whole mutation, occurs in one single step. For example, streptomycin resistance, the mutants will vary widely in the degree of resistance. This is seen mainly in case of Mycobacterium tuberculosis, when it develops resistance to the drugs like anti-tubercular drugs like INH and rifampicin. So mutational drug resistance, only one drug resistance occurs at a time. Multiple drug resistance occurs at a time in case of transferable drug resistance. So low degree resistance is imparted by mutational drug resistance against high degree resistance imparted in transferable drug resistance. So since low degree resistance is imparted in mutational drug resistance, we can overcome it by giving a very high dose of that particular antibiotic. But high drug dose is ineffective in case of transferable drug resistance. Drug combinations can prevent the emergence of mutant strains. For example, anti-tubercular therapy, which is a combination of 4 drugs or 2 drugs or 3 drugs. But drug-resistant drug combinations cannot prevent the emergence of the transferable drug resistance. Resistance cannot spread in case of mutational drug resistance. It can be spread vertically, that is, from when the bacteria divides and forms 2 daughter cells, the gene can go into both the daughter cells. But resistance can spread horizontally, that is, to other bacteria in the environment in case of transferable drug resistance. The mutants may be defective and virulence may be low in case of mutational drug resistance. So when they become resistant, they become less virulent. So their virulence will be impaired. But mutants are not defective usually in case of transferable drug resistance, and the virulence may or may not be reduced in case of this transferable drug resistance. So these are the different mechanisms of development of resistance to antibiotics in the bacteria. The most important mechanism is production of enzyme which destroys the antibiotic, and the most commonly produced enzymes by different classes of beta-lactamases which hydrolyze the beta-lactam antibiotics. Next comes impermeability. Most of the bacteria or fungi which are intrinsically resistant to different bacteria, they are due to this impermeability. The antibiotics enter the bacterial cell through certain channels known as porine channels, but bacteria then alter the shapes of these porine channels, so the antibiotics cannot penetrate the bacterial cell and cannot exert their action. So it may be seen in case of intrinsic resistance. It can be seen in case of acquired resistance as well, particularly in case of Pseudomonas. Then efflux mechanism, once the antibiotic enters the bacterial cell, there is a pump mechanism inside the bacterial cell which drives out the antibiotic from the bacterial cell outside. Then there is the altered target site by which penicillin resistance develops in pneumococci by the formation of altered penicillin binding protein. So here the bacteria changes the shape of the target to which the antibiotic must first bind to exert its effect. But if it changes the shape of the target, the antibiotic becomes ineffective because it cannot bind to the target to exert its action. And the last mechanism is the bypass mechanism. Say a bacterium converts a metabolite A to metabolite B following a particular pathway, say folic acid to folinic acid by a particular pathway, and cotrimoxazole or sulfonamides just disrupts this pathway. But when the bacteria is under antibiotic pressure, it forms and it develops an alternative pathway by which the metabolite A can be converted into metabolite B. So the antibiotic will have no action. So by this, the methicillin resistant Staphylococcus aureus forms by this mechanism, this bypass mechanism, due to the formation of new penicillin binding protein, and cotrimoxazole and sulfonamide resistance also develops by this bypass mechanism. So what happens in the community? In the community, the antibiotic pressure is low. Most of the patients, they are not, the individuals, they are not taking antibiotics. So there the resistance trends will be few and far between. They will be rare in the community. But in the hospital environment, there are lots of antibiotic pressure. There is lots of antibiotics in use in the patients, particularly in the intensive care units, also in the general wards. So the bacteria there in the environment are always under antibiotic pressure, and so the antibiotic resistance trends will be high in the hospital environment. And a bacteria which develops resistant to one antibiotic usually becomes resistant to other antibiotics as well, because such organisms are likely to be exposed to other antibiotics in the physician's efforts to treat that infection. The physician will change one antibiotic to another antibiotic because the first antibiotic is not working. So by that, the bacteria will be exposed to more and more antibiotics, and they will become resistant to more and more antibiotics. And there is also a genetic explanation. The antibiotic resistant genes prefer to aggregate. One or more resistant genes can be incorporated into the same transposon, and new and multi-resistant transposons can be formed, which can be then transferred to other bacteria in the environment. And nowadays we are having this established and emerging resistance trends. We are facing them regularly in our practice in the hospital-based laboratories as well as in the diagnostic laboratories. Amongst the gram positives, we are having methicillin-resistant Staph aureus, Staphylococcus aureus, glycopeptide intermediate sensitive Staph aureus, then glycopeptide-resistant Staph aureus, methicillin-resistant coagulase negative Staphylococcus, glycopeptide-resistant Enterococcus, penicillin tolerant or penicillin resistant pneumococci. Then amongst the gram negatives, we are having beta lactamase producing Haemophilus influenzae and Moraxella catarrhalis. But the most important problem bugs that the physicians face nowadays, as well as the microbiologists encounter nowadays, are the gram-negative bacilli which produce ESBLs, that is extended spectrum beta lactamases, and other types of beta lactamases like OXA type of beta lactamases, AMPC type of beta lactamases, and some of the bacteria will produce multiple beta lactamases at the same time. So they are known as co-producers of different beta lactamases. So now we are also having the carbapenem resistant non-fermenters like carbapenem resistant Pseudomonas acinetobacter. Carbapenem resistant Enterobacteriaceae is now an entity. 5 years back, most of our bugs, the gram-negative bacilli, that is Klebsiella and E. coli, we found them sensitive to carbapenems. But nowadays, within 5 years, around 40% of our Klebsiella isolates and around 20% of our E. coli isolates are found to be resistant to carbapenems. Within 5 years, it has risen from 0% to 40%. So that's a very threatening scenario that we are now facing, particularly the doctors who are treating the patients. So carbapenems were considered as the highest end of antibiotics. Now carbapenem resistance is emerging in the bacteria. So what is next in store? We have to use now polymyxin or colistin to treat the infections. And after the bacteria develop, very soon they will develop resistance to polymyxins or colistin, because resistance to polymyxins is emerging in the gram-negative bacilli. They have been reported from different labs, different hospitals of Kolkata as well. So then we will go back to the pre-antibiotic era, when we will have to again resort to some roots or something to cure our patients. So we have to use these drugs judiciously. So there are other types of resistance also, like fluoroquinolone resistance, which is due to DNA gyrase enzyme. Then multi-drug resistant and extended drug resistant Mycobacterium tuberculosis is emerging. Fluconazole resistant Candida species, because fluconazole is the most common antifungal that is used in clinical practice. So now fungi are developing resistance to fluconazole. So what are the beta lactamases? They are the most commonly produced enzymes that hydrolyze the beta lactams. They are actually bacterial enzymes that hydrolyze the beta lactam rings by attacking the amide bonds in the beta lactam rings of penicillins and cephalosporins, thereby inactivating the drugs. Different types of beta lactamases are produced by the bacteria, of which TEM, TEM1 and 2, SHV, and CTXM, that is cefotaxime type of beta lactamases, they are the most common. And they are seen mainly in gram-negative bugs, particularly Enterobacteriaceae, and also sometimes in gram-positive bugs. And they confer high level of resistance to penicillins and low level of resistance to first generation cephalosporins. And now for the higher generation beta lactamases that are produced, they can be classified into 4 different classes, class A, B, C and D, of which class A, C and D come under the serine enzymes, and class B because they contain a zinc or a metal moiety inside them, they are known as metallo-beta-lactamases or class B enzymes. So class B enzymes include the metallo-beta-lactamases. They are mainly chromosomal mediated. Class A enzymes include the ESBLs, that is extended spectrum beta-lactamases, because they render the bacteria resistant to the extended spectrum beta-lactams like third and fourth generation cephalosporins and monobactams, that is Aztreonam. Then KPC, Klebsiella pneumoniae carbapenems, also comes under class A. Class A enzymes are mainly plasmid mediated. Class C enzymes are chromosomal mediated. They include the AMC type of beta lactamases. And class D enzymes are plasmid mediated. They include the OXA type of beta lactamases. In India, bacteria are now producing multiple types of beta lactamases simultaneously at the same time. Another thing you have to know is about the inoculum effect. In the laboratory, when we perform the bacterial sensitivity, antimicrobial sensitivity, we are using a particular inoculum of the bacteria, say 10 to the power 5 colony forming unit or 10 to the power 5 bacteria per milliliter of the peptone water suspension or nutrient broth suspension that we are using for detecting the sensitivity. But if the concentration of the bacteria is higher in the body fluids or in blood, then the MIC of that particular antibiotic for that particular isolate will go up much higher. In some cases, it goes up many times. For example, it can go up the MIC at an inoculum of 10 to the power 5. If it is 16, it will go up to 512 if the inoculum concentration is increased to 10 to the power 7. So we are performing the antimicrobial sensitivity at a particular inoculum, say 10 to the power 5. If the bacterial concentration is much higher in the body fluids, then that antibiotic which we have reported as sensitive from our laboratory based on our results will not act in that patient, because the patient is having a much higher load of the bacteria in his or her blood or body fluids. So there will be treatment failure even, and the physician will tell the lab, you have reported so and so antibiotic as sensitive, but it is not working in my patient. So it may be due to the inoculum effect. It is exhibited by the cephalosporins and also by beta-lactamase inhibitor combinations like piperacillin, tazobactam. But this is not exhibited by high-end antibiotics like carbapenem. So the conventional microbiology report usually reports the sensitivity status of the different antibiotics, but actually our report should contain the MIC also, minimum inhibitory concentration also in the report, because that helps the physicians to choose the dose of the antibiotic that he has to give to the patient, he or she has to give to the patient. Rational choice of antibiotics is based on the knowledge. The physician should have the knowledge of intrinsic resistance of the bacteria to certain antibiotics. So that has already been discussed in earlier. And the knowledge of in vitro versus in vivo differences, because in the laboratory we are doing the in vitro susceptibility, but in vivo, that is within the patient's body, the scenario is totally different. So there may be many effects like inoculum effect, the immunological mediators like the antibodies which may take care of the infection, the PK/PD of the antibiotics, pharmacokinetics, pharmacodynamics, and the in vitro sensitivity reports may not always match with in vivo response of the drugs, as it is very difficult to simulate human body conditions in the laboratory. So physicians have to choose the antibiotics rationally based on the clinical findings of that patient and what is the likely pathogen that is responsible, whether it is a gram-positive bug or a gram-negative bug, whether it is a community-acquired bug or a hospital-acquired bug, that the physician has to keep in mind while choosing the antibiotic regime for his patients. And also he has to choose his antibiotics based on the local microbial epidemiology. He or she has to consult the local microbiological data for this, and he has to abide by the hospital antibiotic policy, and when he or she gets the actual culture sensitivity reports, he has to change the treatment accordingly. So the first choice of antibiotic, which is known as the empirical choice of antibiotic, because at that point of time the clinician does not have the culture sensitivity report. He has to send the cultures, actual cultures from that patient, because he is suspecting the patient to be suffering from some infection. So the appropriate culture, say if he suspects his patient to suffer from urinary tract infection, he has to send the urine sample for culture and sensitivity, and then he should put the patient on the empirical antibiotic therapy that will be guided by what is the likely pathogen, what is the local microbial data, what is the antibiotic policy, by these factors. So that choice of antibiotic, the empirical choice of antibiotic, should be appropriate. If it is inappropriate, it may lead to more mortality in the patients, more morbidity and mortality in the patients. And when the patient, when the doctor gets the actual culture sensitivity report, which takes around 48 hours time, 48 to 72 hours time, then he or she can de-escalate. So suppose he has started the patient on antimicrobial therapy, 2 antibiotics, say 1 gram negative, 1 antibiotic to cover the gram negatives, 1 antibiotic to cover the gram positives, 1 antibiotic to cover the fungus like candida. Then when the actual culture sensitivity report comes back, say it shows the growth of only Escherichia coli, which is sensitive to most of the antibiotics. So it is a gram-negative bacillus, so the doctor can take off the gram-positive drug and the antifungal drug and continue only with the gram-negative coverage. So that is what is known as de-escalation, which should be attempted at 48 to 72 hours after starting the antimicrobial therapy, when they get the actual culture sensitivity report. And we should also focus on other methods of infection control, of which the most important method is the hand washing or hand disinfection with disinfectants like chlorhexidine or alcohol based disinfectants, alcohol chlorhexidine mixture, before and between patient contacts. Because if the doctors and the caregivers, health caregivers like nurses, paramedics, etc., they wash their hands properly, they can reduce the nosocomial infection rate and transmission of multi-drug resistant organisms from one patient to another by at least 33%. And they have also to follow the antibiotic policy of the hospital, which are the policies for effective antibiotic utilization. But hand washing happens to be the most important measure to reduce nosocomial infection by multi-drug resistant organisms.